doing accounting standards there, we were doing ACCA, and we were standards only to clear our exams. But when people start applying these concepts in life, there often happens to be, there often happens to be a bit of a disconnect in terms of what is there in real life and what you have studied in textbooks. So that somehow makes the real life job a little difficult because people are not able to draw that parallel between the accounting standard, what they have studied in the textbook, versus they are looking at in their real life. I speak to so many chartered accountancy students, ACCA students whom I teach on a daily basis, and all of them have one complaint that, sir, we sometimes know the mechanics of a particular process, but we don't know how that activity actually works, or the logic behind it. So the whole idea behind starting the masterclass was to make sure that if you are a CA student, if you are an ACCA student, you're pursuing Indian CMA, you're pursuing any of these FNA courses, and you feel that there is a gap in your accounting knowledge, in your financial reporting knowledge, not accounting so much, or if you are already a chartered accountant and you need some more clarity on these topics, then I thought, why not launch a series of discussions where we discuss we discuss accounting standards without the burden of having an exam blocking our mental bandwidth at that point in time. And I've personally have experienced this, that when I look at accounting standards from a pure academic standpoint, I understand it better than when I have the constant pressure of an examination coming up. So we have been doing a master classes for, I think, the last 2.5 months. The last 5 sessions were focused solely on revenue, IFRS 15 or Ind AS 115. We did one session on Ind AS 116, that is IFRS 16, and there was a session on IAS 37 also. Today, I want to take up a topic which, be it a CA student, be it an ACCA student, be it someone who is already a chartered accountant, everyone comes across the topic consolidation at some point of time or the other in their academic journey. And I thought everyone creates such a big deal, constantly about, oh, consolidation is tough or consolidation is too much. I thought, let the next edition of the masterclass be all about understanding how the process of consolidation works and how exactly does that help us in, if we get the logic in place, how will that help us to deepen our understanding. So if you stay with me till the end of the session today, I can promise you that the basics of consolidation will become clear to you. Okay. Now, before we dive deeper into consolidation, just a couple of points for everyone. I would request you to keep your mics on mute because that might end up disturbing the other participants. So just a small request, please keep your mics on mute. You have the chat box. I would request you to put in all your questions in the chat box. I will make sure that when the session is done, I will answer every single question that you have. Now, you could be a CA student, an ACCA student, as I said, a chartered accountant, somebody who wants to study US. Yeah, the session is going to help you. And all questions that you have about professional courses, about your career, about finding jobs, about finding the right coaching, all of those questions will be answered. Just, I would request you to wait till the end of the session, and then that entire time is yours. You can ask me as many questions as you want. I'm there to answer every single question. Recording for this session will be uploaded on my YouTube channel. I will be giving you a link to my YouTube channel also. So please do that. Now let's dive headlong into the concept of consolidation. Some of you who already know how consolidation works might find it a little slow, but please bear with me and just let's get into the right rhythm so that we understand consolidation for what it's worth. Okay, so when I look at, say for example, this is one company, of Tata Motors. Okay. Tata Motors is a company which, you know what Tata Motors does. Tata Motors Limited. It has non-current assets of 500. It has investment in Concord. Concord is another company, and Tata Motors has invested in this company. Okay. And what is the value of that investment? The value of that investment today is, say, 350. Okay. And then Tata Motors also has some CA. CA, matlab I'm writing these are my current assets. Okay. Let my current assets be 150. This is like a basic, simple sa balance sheet hai. Nothing complicated in this one. On the liability side, what do I have? On the liability side, I have my equity, which is basically, let me write this as equity share capital, or let this be 300. Then reserves, let this be 200. Then I have non-current liabilities of 350, and I have current liabilities of 150. And this is a very simple balance sheet. Naturally, Tata Motors ka balance sheet is far more complex. We are keeping it simple here. And now there is another entity. Okay. What is the name of that entity? The name of that entity is Concord. And what does Concord do? Concord is basically engaged in making spare parts for all the vehicles that Tata Motors basically sells. So your Indicas and Indigos and all of those vehicles, it makes spare parts for those vehicles. So this is another entity called Concord Private Limited. Okay. On the asset side, again, let's keep it simple. Let this be 250. Uh, Let my current assets, NCA is non-current assets. Let my current assets be 100. Let the equity share capital be 150. Reserves, let these be, let me make it 300 here. Let my reserves be 50. Then I have my non-current liability and my current liability. Ultimately, see, abhi ye to mera apna balance sheet hai. I can keep any numbers as I want, but the focus is not the numbers. The focus is what we are going to do with those numbers. Okay. So, what's the total of the liability side here? The total is 350. Here, the total is how much? The total is 200. So let these be another 150. So the balance sheet of Concord Limited is in front of you, and so is the balance sheet of Tata Motors. Now I am telling you that Tata Motors holds 90% of the equity share capital of Concord. Okay. Tata Motors holds 90% of the equity share capital of Concord. And now I present, my year comes to an end, and now I want to present my financial statements to the world. I am Tata Motors, and when I present my standalone financial statements, everybody is okay with it. But then people say, "Yeah, you are presenting your own balance sheet, but you hold 90% of the equity share capital of another entity. Don't you think that also deserves a certain mention in the financial statements?" I said, yeah, okay, I'll put a disclosure. Now, I'll put one line which says that Tata Motors holds around 90% of the equity share capital of Concord. But is that enough? Apparently not. When I hold, what do equity shares represent? Equity shares, or your ordinary shares, basically represent the ownership interest of the company. When Tata Motors holds 90% of Concord, what does that mean? That out of the total ownership of Concord, 90% of that ownership is of Tata Motors. Equity shares or ordinary shares are not just ownership. When you talk about ownership, you also get a decision making capacity. You also get that authority to take decisions. All the shareholders are owners, and each share is one vote. So one share is one vote, one ordinary share is one vote. And if Tata Motors holds 90% of the equity share capital of Concord, then don't you think it is Tata Motor will decide what Concord Private Limited will do. Tata Motors will decide where the office is going to be, which tools will be manufactured, which items will be considered, which items ka production you are going to stop, where should the premises be, should you expand everything, employee ko hike kitna dena hai, and chaprasi ko kitna dena hai. All of these points, Tata Motors is, there are these people who hold the remaining 10% of this company. Okay, but they are in minority right now. If you're talking, say, of the parliament also, the party who is in majority, that is people who hold more than half of the seats in the parliament, they are the ones who decide what the laws are going to be made of and how the entire country will run. Similarly here, any company, if it holds more than 50% share of the other company, naturally that company gets decision making rights. It is able to tell the other company what it can do and what it cannot do. And Concord Limited will have to listen to what Tata Motors is saying. Concord Limited अपना मनमानी नहीं कर सकता है. It has to listen to what Tata Motors is saying. If Tata Motors says close the plant at Pune, then Concord has to close the plant at Pune. I'm telling you in very, very rudimentary terms. So if there is one company which holds more than 50% shares of the other company, I say that this company gets control of the other company. And what do you mean by control? Control is basically the ability to direct. That is the ability to tell the other company. I'm, I'm speaking like a layman right now. I haven't gotten anywhere near accounting. That is the ability to tell the other company what it can and cannot do. That is what we mean by control. Ability to direct the other company, ability to tell the other person, ये आप कर सकते हो या ये नहीं कर सकते हो. Now, if I own 90% of Tata Motors, if Tata Motors owns 90% of Concord, then don't you think when it is preparing its financial statements, it should show what asset it owns. It will show it's 500. But Concord Limited का जो 250 का non-current asset है, उसमें भी 90% shares, 90% of that is owned by Tata Motors. So when one company holds 90% of the other company and it wants to show a true and fair view to the users of financial statements, if that company shows only this much, if it shows only this particular balance sheet, then the users of financial statements will say कि अरे यार ये तो inadequate information है. You are only telling about the assets that you legally own. But इसका भी तो 90% आपका है. अगर इसका भी 90% आपका है and you want to show the world what exactly is your financial position, तो and if you want to give a true and fair view, तो you just say कि अरे मैं सिर्फ खुद के assets दिखाऊंगा. I own 90% of the assets of the other company. I own 90% of the other company. तो उसका all the benefits of that company I am going to enjoy. और उसके जो पाप है, उस पाप में भी I am an equal contributor. I am an equal participator. So what do I mean by that? If Concord has non-current assets of 250, 90% तो मेरा है ना boss. Even when it owns 100, when Concord Limited owns current assets of 100, and Tata Motors holds 90% of this company, वो 100 का 90% belongs to Tata Motors. So when Tata Motors wants to show its balance sheet, standalone balance sheet is okay, but I am still not giving a true and fair view to the users of financial statements. They have a right to know कि Tata Motors का 500 का खुद का नॉन करंट असेट है and it also owns 90% of the other company. So if you want to give a complete picture to the users of financial statements, you should basically combine the two financial statements. ठीक है? You should basically combine the two financial statements. And how exactly will you combine? Somebody might say कि अरे line by line add कर दो. I'm like, हाँ, okay, fair point. Line by line add कर दो. And when I combine the two financial statements and I add it line by line, what is the final outcome? Let's see. Let's see what a line by line addition does to me. ठीक है. So I'm showing non-current assets here. Acha, the method that I am showing, this is only for explanation. हाँ. Consolidation actually कैसे होता है, that also I will show you. Right now I am only showing you the logic behind it, then I will tell you what the accounting standard does. Please pay attention. So non-current assets. ठीक है, टाटा मोटर्स का खुद का कितना है नॉन करंट असेट 500 एंड सामने वाला कंपनी कॉनकॉर्ड प्राइवेट लिमिटेड उसका नॉन करंट असेट कितना है सी इज कॉनकॉर्ड. ठीक है, उसका नॉन करंट असेट है 250. बट इफ आई एड 250 डोंट यू थिंक दैट इज आल्सो मिसरिप्रेजेंटेशन. पूरा 250 मेरा नहीं है, आई एम अ 90% ओनर. तो if I am a 90% owner, सब चीज का 90% is mine. So 250 into 90%. अच्छा, this is not the actual method of consolidation. I am just showing it to you for better understanding. Non-current asset कितना होगा 500 plus 250 into 90%. ठीक है, फिर I will write down investment in Concord. ठीक है, कितना है value of investment 300. Then I will show you the current assets. ठीक है, करंट असेट्स खुद का कितना है टाटा मोटर्स का 150 प्लस कॉनकॉर्ड का कितना है, कॉनकॉर्ड का है 100. 100 इंटू 90% कितना होगा 150 प्लस 90 240. ओके, गुड जॉब. देन लेट्स डू इक्विटी शेयर कैपिटल. ठीक है, इक्विटी शेयर कैपिटल टाटा मोटर्स खुद का ऐसा लिख दो 300 लिख दो. Okay. And Tata Motors owns 90% of the other company. What is the name of the other company? Concord Limited का जो total equity share capital है, Tata Motors owns 90% of that share capital. तो उसका भी यहाँ पे portion लेकर आओ. Equity share capital and write down C. C for Concord. 150 into 90%. Be a little patient. I'll tell you what is the meaning of all of this. ठीक है, रिजर्व्स टाटा मोटर्स के रिजर्व्स कितने हैं 200. रिजर्व्स कॉनकॉर्ड इसका टोटल अक्यूमुलेटेड प्रॉफिट इज 50 एंड आई ओन 90% ऑफ द अदर कंपनी. इफ आई ओन 90% ऑफ द अदर कंपनी तो क्या होगा उसका 90% ऑल्सो आई हैव टू इंक्लूड हियर 50 into 90%, that is 45. Okay, now let's talk of non-current liability. Non-current liability टाटा मोटर्स का खुद का कितना है नॉन करंट लाइबिलिटी 350 एंड दूसरे कंपनी में कॉनकॉर्ड मोटर्स में in Concord, Tata Motors owns 90% shares. So, as I said, assets में 90% मेरा, तो liabilities में भी unfortunately I have to take responsibility for 90%. So 100 into 90%. ठीक है. So this is 350 plus 90, 440. ठीक है. And then current liability. करंट लाइबिलिटी टाटा मोटर्स कितना है खुद का 100 सामने वाले का 50. खुद का 100 एंड सामने वाला कंपनी कॉनकॉर्ड लिमिटेड उसका कितना है करंट लाइबिलिटी 50. बट पूरा 50 इज नॉट माय रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी. माय रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी इज ओनली 90% ऑफ इट. सो 100 प्लस 50 into 90%. Now just see if the balance sheet tallies. Tally तो होना चाहिए ना, because I have just done a line by line addition. But instead of adding दूसरे कंपनी का full balance sheet, I have added 90% of each value. ठीक है, अब have a look at this. See if the balance sheet tallies. Tally हो गया तो great. नहीं हुआ तो then we have no eligibility to do anything. चलो, balance sheet तो tally हो गया. Now observe one thing. When I say that one company owns 90% of the other company, what does it own? I don't own the assets directly. I own the share cap. I own 90% of the shares. And if I am a 90% owner, सामने वाले का जो भी है, उसका 90% belongs to me. So I don't own the assets directly. I hold equity shares in the other company. So now you see there is an investment in Concord that I have written at 300. This is the cost of that investment. And as in this is the amount that I have paid. And observe one thing. ठीक है, ये company देखो. What is when I say that I am an owner of Concord Limited to the extent of 90%, What do I own? You could say that, you know, Tata Motors holds 90% of the shares. That is, it is a 90% owner. So in everything that Concord owns, that is asset or owes, Tata Motors has a 90% share. So, and 90% share kiska? Everything that the other company owns. So total assets आप देखो, what are the total assets? Total assets are non-current assets plus current assets. From that you remove the amount that is owed to outsiders, non-current liability minus current liability. These are my net assets. Net assets matlab after Concord Limited has paid off all the liabilities to outsiders, what money is left with it? These are your net assets. What are the net assets right now? 250 plus 100 minus 100 minus 50. Okay, this makes my net assets as 200. Now Concord Limited का जो 200 का net asset है, उसमें टाटा मोटर्स ओन्स 80% ऑफ इट, इस 80 नहीं 90%, इसका भी 90, इसका भी 90, इसका भी 90, इसका भी 90. सो बेसिकली नेट असेट्स का 90% इज ओन्ड बाय टाटा मोटर्स. ठीक है, टाटा मोटर्स ओन्स 90% ऑफ इट. ठीक है. Now another way of expressing non-current assets, one thing that you saw was total assets minus outside liabilities. एक और चीज देखो, observe one more thing. If you add up equity share capital plus reserves, what will you see? You will see 150 plus 50, that is 200. This is also equal to the total of net assets. Basically, amount that belongs to the owners of the company. See, total assets 350 mein se I paid off the non-current liability, I paid off the current liability. The amount that is left with me, that amount belongs to the owners of the company. And owners of the company mein Tata Motors is a 90% owner. So 150 plus 50, that is 200 ka 90% belongs to Tata Motors. Okay. So what is the value of stake of Tata Motors? Don't you think it is 200 into 90%, that is 180? Total net assets या owners fund, owner का पैसा है 200, out of that 90% belongs to Tata Motors. So when 90% belongs to Tata Motors, उनके share का value कितना है? The value of their holding, the value of their stake, the value of their interest in the company is how much? It is 180. Okay. Now observe one thing. Okay. Ye 180 you can see here also. See this 135 and 180. Now on the liability side of your balance sheet, you have the value of stake. So when Tata Motors purchased a stake in Concord, उस stake का value is 135 plus 45, that is 180. But if you see the asset side, यहाँ पे क्या लिखा है? यहाँ पे you see investment in Concord worth 300. So just think about it. Tata Motors acquired net assets worth 180. ये 180 कैसे आया? 200 into 90%. Tata Motors acquired net assets worth 180, but acquire these net assets, Tata Motors paid 300. ठीक है, यहाँ पे you can see 300. This is the amount that was paid by Tata Motors to acquire a 90% stake in Concord. Now, on the asset side, you have the total amount you have invested, and on the left hand side, that is on the liability side, you basically have the total value of your stake in the other company. So instead of showing it as two separate items, ideally what you should do is you should let the users of financial statements know that when I'm combining the balance sheet, I own 90% of the other company, jiska value to 135 plus 45, 180 hai, but I paid 300 rupees. So can I say that Tata Motors paid 120 extra, that is over and above the value of the net assets. This amount that you paid extra to acquire a stake in the other company is known as goodwill. What is this called? This is called goodwill. And why would Tata Motors agree to pay a rupee more than the net asset value? There's a reason. Maybe there is an expectation that this company has a very good supply chain. This company has good contracts with good connects, industry connects with all the suppliers, all the different market participants, so they will be able to secure raw material at a cheaper price. You can make use of their already established network and warehouses. So there are certain synergistic gains that you expect to achieve, and hence this 120 that you are paying is the ex you might think of this as an excess amount, but Tata Motors is being strategic. Tata Motors is thinking that if I acquire 90% of the other company by paying 120 extra, I get so many other benefits. This is the value of that benefit. For those people who are doing AFM, in the topic mergers and acquisition, you calculate synergy gains, right? This thoda sa tod morod ke becomes your synergy gain. So how much is the goodwill? You paid 300 for something whose value is 180, your goodwill is 120. Now, instead of showing, see, this 300 and this 180 represent the same thing. So, instead of showing it on two different sides of the balance sheet, what I would do is I would want to combine these two together, and the combined balance sheet stage 2. What will this look like? Equity share capital 0, 0, 0, सब कुछ. But यहाँ पे what I'm going to do is I'm going to show goodwill of 120. You see my balance sheet still tallies, huh? My balance sheet still tallies. Now, one question that often used to come to my mind is, कि यार ये, why don't people actually do this 90%, 90%, 90%? See, it's very easy to do it here because we had like 4 items basically. But it is not possible to do it, when you are looking at real balance sheets, which have thousands of line items, that are there in both the companies. And at that stage, combining the two is going to be a very difficult job, and there is going to be a clerical error. However smart the other person is, there is going to be a clerical error in this process. So how do you overcome the clerical error? Please try to understand. And see, 90% is ideally you should do this only. You should do proportionate consolidation, but our accounting standard says don't do it. Our Ind AS bolo, IFRS bolo, regular accounting standards bolo, they don't allow you to do this. Okay. What they expect from you is different. Now, let me give you a situation. If I tell you that there is an account called Satyamed account, and usme I want to see a debit of 90. Okay. Now, in Satyamed account, a simple ledger, I want to see a debit of 90. So, debit the ledger by 90 and your job is done. Or you could debit by 100 and credit by 10. It will still produce the same result. Debit by 100, credit by 10, it will still produce the same result. Now, I want to, I don't want to end up making that clerical error, 90%, 90%, 90%, kuch galat ho gaya to. I don't want to run that risk. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add everything. Pura 100% add kar do and adjust the remaining difference. So now let me take you to the next stage in the consolidation process. Okay. Stage 3, ये सब ठीक है, but instead of 250 into 90%, I'm going to do just 250. This will become 750. Goodwill 120 रहने दो. Here, so let's do one thing. This I am cancelling out, है ना? So let me strike this through. Better समझेगा आपको. Now this becomes 750. Goodwill को रहने दो. Here, this becomes 150 plus 100, 250. ठीक है. share capital abhi, this is pura you have taken, and this share capital and reserves you have adjusted against the amount of investment, so this is okay, there is no problem here. Now ye adjust kar do, remove this 90%, so 350 plus 100 is 450, and ये भी adjust मत करो अभी, ठीक है. So let's just check whether all the numbers have been correctly copied as it is. Now you see your balance sheet has, you have removed the impact of certain items. आपने क्या किया, this 90%, 90%, 90% you removed, but doing this is also incorrect ना. See, एक तो your balance sheet is not tallying. I have added 100% of non-current assets of Concord. I have added 100% of current assets of Concord. And this is wrong. I don't own all 100%. I own only 90% of everything. Okay. The remaining 10% belongs to someone else. Okay. So the remaining 10% belongs to someone else. So if that amount does not belong to me, I have no business including that here. Okay. But I have already included 100% of everything. So ideally, I should adjust the remaining 10%. This amount of worth 10%, not 10%. This amount worth 10% belongs to someone else, and I have included that in my balance sheet. So to show the correct picture, I should ideally separate it out. ठीक है, I should ideally separate it out and show it on the liability side of balance sheet. Why on the liability side? Because see, this amount belongs to someone else. किसी और का पैसा है that I have included in my net assets. It doesn't belong to me. So जिसका है उसका amount आप separate out करो. Now out of non-current assets of 250, 10% belongs to someone else. ठीक है, belongs to someone else, that is 25. Then out of current asset of 100, Concord, this is all for Concord, 10% belongs to someone else, that is 10. Out of non-current liability of how much? 100. Out of non-current liability of 100, 10% is someone else's responsibility. That is 10. And out of current liability of 150, 10% is 150. Current liability of 50, 10% is someone else's responsibility. That is 5. Okay. So Tata Motors has included 25 plus 10 minus 10 minus 5 in its net assets, which belongs to someone else. Okay. This is wrong. So ideally, you should remove it and show it as belonging to someone else. अब ये तब से मैं someone else बोल रहा हूँ. What do I call this someone else? See, if I have the controlling stake, I am in majority, he is in minority. So chartered accountants of my vintage, when we were studying, we used to call them minority shareholders. ठीक है? We used to call them minority shareholders. But today we call them non-controlling interest. Why do I call them non-controlling interest? Because see, if I have the controlling interest, then common sense they have a non-controlling interest in the company. So what I have to do is this 20 I have included in my current asset and I have included in my net asset. ये 20 जो amount है, I have included this. कितना है? 25 plus 10 minus 10 minus 5, 20. I have included in my net assets which belongs to someone else. तो ये मेरा नहीं है ना, किसी और का है, तो इसको बैलेंस शीट में लाइबिलिटी साइड पे दिखा दो. कॉल इट नॉन कंट्रोलिंग इंटरेस्ट. यहाँ पे कितना आएगा? यहाँ पे आएगा 20. अब सी whether your balance sheet tallies or not. Of course it does. The total is 1120. So this is how you combine the two balance sheets and you present a consolidated balance sheet for the users of for the world to see. My process, this is what the accounting standard tells you. Accounting standard को ये proportionate consolidation मंजूर नहीं है. Accounting standard doesn't like this into 90% into 90%. They tell you पूरा का पूरा add it line by line, non current asset, non current liability सबको add कर दो. Add it together in one place and then the amount belonging to these minority shareholders उसको अलग से निकाल के show it on the liability side. So this is your non-controlling interest, and we went through the entire process of how are two balance sheets combined and presented as a part of the consolidated financial statements. This is how a balance sheet is consolidated. Of course, there are a lot of other concepts यहाँ पे. This is just a very rudimentary, very simple approach to consolidation. I'm sure you have done it in your CA curriculum. You have done it in your ACCA curriculum. Inter में किया है, final में किया है, multiple stages you have done consolidation, and I'm sure you must have understood it using a similar approach only. But I thought a complete revisit would help us to establish what the basics of consolidation looks like. Now, इसमें क्या होगा? इसमें अभी there will be a lot of other, other ingredients now. What if the subsidiary is अच्छा, अभी तक I haven't introduced certain terms. This company, Tata Motors, is called the parent. ठीक है? Tata Motors is called the parent. The accounting standard calls it the parent company. We also call it the holding company. And Concord. What is Concord? Concord is called subsidiary. And these two companies together, they are called a group. Okay. Together, these two companies are called a group. Tata Motors, parent or holding, whatever you want to call it, and Concord is subsidiary. These two companies together are called a group. And when do you say or when do you consolidate? Now, it is important to understand that also. When do you consolidate? When do you consolidate? So, when your answer would be when one company controls another company. When one company controls another company. And how does it request you to please put yourself on mute? So, when one company controls another company, you would say that now is the time to consolidate because my assets are my assets, but uske bhi assets ka one share belongs to me. ठीक है, my assets are my assets, uske assets are also my assets, but not all of them, only a part of them. So when one company controls another company, that is one company holds more than 50% shares, 50% ordinary shares. of another company, or one company has the right to appoint a majority of the directors on the board of another company. ठीक है. One company has the right to appoint a majority of the directors on the board of another company. So if it is a 7-member board and one company has the right to appoint 4 members out of 7, that means one company can control the other company. ठीक है. अब there are, see, we haven't touched upon the accounting standard yet. Accounting standard gives you some more situations for control. All of that will come, all of that will be discussed definitely. But before we discuss the meaning of control, before we discuss the meaning of, a lot of other technical terms, I thought it was necessary to get the idea of, to get the basic idea of consolidation in place, which is why today's session. Now, the next couple of versions of the editions of the masterclass will focus solely on consolidation. Okay. Now, I do see some questions being typed out. So yeah, about the, yeah, so I'll share all the details that you have asked for. Okay. So this was the starting point of Acha, where to show 300 Tata's investment in Concord. See, Concord ka ye jo equity share capital hai. When you show equity share capital, this includes shares of everyone, na, my shares, your
ఫోన్లో
shares.
తెచ్చుకుంటే హాఫ్ చేసి పెట్టుకున్నావే.
Please put yourself on mute. Okay. So see this 150 and 50. This is amount belonging to shareholders, and उसमें 90% belongs to Tata Motors. So यहाँ पे this is included here, which is why we showed it separately. उसका share we showed it separately. Okay. Now these accounting standards are, see, today what we did, of course, this is applicable everywhere because this is the Indian accounting standards, which we call Ind AS, are based on the international financial reporting standards. So what you study here in terms of IFRS is applicable globally. It is also applicable in India. Okay. Now, any other questions that you have, please make sure that you type it out so that I can help you with any queries. Just 1 second. This is the link to my YouTube channel. Now on my YouTube channel, you will find recordings of all the previous editions of the masterclass, and I keep on uploading standards. I keep on uploading recordings of different accounting concepts and standards on a regular basis. So you can always check it there. Along with that, I am sure you have other questions, which I would welcome you to discuss right now. But along with that, I'm also sharing a link to my LinkedIn profile. I would request you to send me a connection request. I'm working on building a community specifically for IFRS. So I will add you to the community once it is made. Any other questions that you have, be it about the chartered accountancy course, be it about the ACCA course, be it about just the diploma IFRS course, you can always reach out. I would request you to please connect with me on LinkedIn so that these days I probably won't check my phone, but I do check my LinkedIn very, very regularly. So any questions that you have, you can drop a message there and I will be more than happy to help you with those. Okay, you are an MCOM graduate, and I'm assuming that you are working somewhere. If you take up, say, for example, if you take up the diploma IFRS course, it will help you gain a proper understanding of the accounting standards, and that can help you to push your career, propel your career in the right direction. So I would recommend you strongly to enroll for the diploma IFRS course. Maybe not now, maybe you think about it, and then you can take up that particular curriculum. Uh, those who need, so if there are chartered accountancy students here and who are in inter or who are in final and who want mentoring or who just want a discussion on accounting standards, or who want coaching, whatever form that you wanted to take, I would request you to again send me a request on LinkedIn, and I've also given you the link to my YouTube channel. Yes, Aneri, you have a question? A quick takeaway. So, Kanika, the recording will be uploaded on YouTube. So, today what I discussed was I discussed how to consolidate a simple consolidation exercise of two financial statements, holding company and subsidiary company. That is what I discussed today. That's all. I am a BCom graduate with 19 years experience in manufacturing, currently facing to search for a new job. Kindly advise. So, if you want to take up a role in financial reporting, then you would have to do courses which align with that. Now, given that you are working, doing a full-time course like a CA might not be the best solution for you, but you can take up a short-term course like diploma IFRS, which you can finish in a lesser amount of time, and that can help you explore better opportunities for your career. Or a course like USCMA can help you. So in US CMA Part 1, of course, that is a US based course, so they have US gap. Now, US gap is slightly different as compared to IFRS. US gap is a rules based approach, IFRS is a principles based approach. Plus, in US gap, now they have different rules. So, they allow LIFO method also, which the accounting standards in IFRS don't allow. So, that's a separate discipline altogether, and you will have to study that individually. Oh, there's one more question. Study material. See, I mean, if you really want to study IFRS, then you could always. There's an author called D.S. Rawat. He has, I mean, a very good explanation of the accounting standards. You should ideally refer those and go through it once. For US GAAP, again, any of these publications will help you. But for IFRS, it would be a very, very useful tool, the book by Mr. D.S. Rawat. Uh, you're enrolling for the course, yes, will help. It will help you benefit your career. If you have finished your MCOM, I would recommend you to consider ACCA also. Think about it. Think about CPA also. So my request to you, Anjos, will be that you send me a request, connection request on LinkedIn. I will connect with you one-on-one, and I can guide you better on this. So let's have a dedicated call for that. Just please send me a request. Okay. I actually do train for, IFRS 17 insurance contracts, but I haven't had that session in a while. But yeah, I can. I'm again posting my LinkedIn link. Request you to send me a connection request. I'm also giving you my link to my YouTube channel where all of this will be posted. So the recordings of the lecture, of the masterclass, recordings of other accounting standards, all of that is there. So make sure that you follow the channel also. There are videos uploaded almost every day, so you can use those. Being CA, having 10 years of work ex in finance and accounts, how will diploma, IFRS or other course help to boost the career? Now, see, you have a huge wealth of experience in, as a chartered accountant already. Now, if you want to explore other domains, like see, if you're saying you have 10 years of experience, you must be, around my time. So what we studied was we studied accounting standards. Today, Ind AS, of course, I'm sure you have worked in those also. So a thorough understanding of Ind AS will help you in, understanding other nuances of your job. And when you want to change your current organization, when you want to move to some other organization, at that time also, it will definitely give you a lot of, it will help you a lot in that department also. So pushing your career and growing in a new field or growing more in the current field, courses like diploma IFRS or courses like ACCA will help. CA with 12 years of work experience in corporate credit. Okay. If you are working in corporate credit, what kind of a job you are looking for, please let me know. Maybe, I can throw some light on that. If I have opportunities in my network, I can, help, I can make that connection possible. If you want to move to finance, Vishal, uh, ideally, my recommendation would be start with CFA. You have done an MBA in finance already. You can start with CFA. Even when you clear level one, it can definitely help you a lot to just get that jump in your salary packages also. So I would strongly recommend you to take up the CFA course. And of course, I request you to connect with me on LinkedIn so that I can give you some more idea, maybe through a one-on-one discussion. If one is semi-qualified CA but not MCOM, would they qualify to pursue? Yes, of course, you would qualify for pursuing ACCA. What you have to do is you have to do a simple thing. You have to send your documents to us. I will help you evaluate the number of exemptions that you have. People who have completed Inter CA, they get seven exemptions. Sorry, six exemptions out of 13, not seven exemptions. And that really helps them to shorten the journey to becoming an ACCA professional. So yes, you are eligible for that particular course. Yes, Aneri, the BPP Learning Media is also good. It's a good one. Guys, I have again shared my LinkedIn profile. The reason I'm emphasizing so much on it is, if you send me specific, points that you want. Say, for example, you want a session on another accounting standard, on another topic, on another domain. I will make sure that I arrange it. The request for consolidation had come some time ago, which is why, I decided I planned it in advance. So if you have similar questions, similar queries, do make sure to reach out. Okay. Perfect. Any other questions, guys? Uh, I'll also share, do send me a request. I will also share my mobile number so that we can connect on call or message first on WhatsApp. I've put in my phone number for you in the chat box. You can drop in a message via WhatsApp. But and then of course we can schedule a discussion. We can schedule a call. The next edition of the master class would be in the next week on another Thursday or Friday. Let me confirm that. And what kind of webinar, Hasina, would you want? So, Arasan, I think I would advise you to take up courses like ACCA or CMA or CFA, and that will really help you to push your syllabus. Hasina, please let me know what exactly do you mean by webinar on CMS syllabus? So, is it like you want to understand the course, or there are topics that you are more interested in? So, once you let me know, I can have that also arranged for you. Perfect, perfect, perfect. So, I think that's pretty much it for the day. Of course. So, Arasan, I have given my mobile number here. I am again resharing my LinkedIn profile. I would request you to send me a connection request, and I will definitely help you with that. And does ACCA, pursuing ACCA, help with CMA India? It doesn't give you any exemptions, but it definitely gives you the right knowledge to pursue and complete your US CMA. Okay. And I have sent my LinkedIn profile. For yet another time, I will send my link to my YouTube channel. And I'm also giving you my mobile number. Drop me a text on WhatsApp and we can take it ahead from there. Okay. Thank you so much, guys. Um, let's work towards making sure whatever queries you have, let me work towards addressing those. Thank you so much. Have a good day. So can you tell me how to drop the Excel sheet here? Is there a way to do that? Because I will send it to you on this thing otherwise on LinkedIn. Otherwise, I'll send it to you right now. I don't know how to drop it here. Is it possible?
No, sir, meeting does not support that, but we can drop this over the groups and channels where we are connected with
Yes,
the teams.
definitely, definitely. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a good day. Hoping to connect with you all soon. Thank you.